Hello everyone, my name is Hafeezat. If you are new to this channel, I am a current events / lifestyle YouTuber here on this platform. I'm a sophomore at Temple University, and I just like to create content that relates to the modern world, whether it be current events that are happening in the media, in the climate, whether it be political or environmental. Whatever I think needs attention, whatever I think needs to be addressed. And besides that, I like to do lifestyle videos because I am currently a college student, so anything that could help out fellow college students or people who are going into college within these next couple of years, or people just want to see what my life is about. I know I'm not the most exciting person ever but I just want to share and document things and use this place as an online portfolio to just share and show the world what I have to offer. Yeah, so just a little introduction if you're new here. And if you're not new here, then you already know what's up. Hello, welcome back. Glad to see my face on your screen again. I hope so. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe at the end of this video. But we're gonna get straight right into it. So if you couldn't tell from the title, this video is gonna be kind of talking about just the media and what we pay attention to. What really struck this idea to come into mind was the most recent events that have been happening throughout the entire world have not been getting this due attention that they deserve. So for example, and I have my notebook here as always. An example I have here right now is right now recently the Amazon forest was recently on fire. A large forest fire broke out. There has speculation as to why and how it broke out. Me personally, I don't know all of the facts, so I'm not going to necessarily comment on the whys or the hows it broke out. But there are tons of articles and tons of different ideas explaining why it happened. The main takeaway from that was the lack of coverage that I perceived about it, as well as some sort of inaction to do something about it. So this is a large entity that not only produces 20% of the oxygen here on this earth, but besides that, it is a home of indigenous peoples within Brazil. So the lack of attention and the lack of care for what happened there was a bit jarring, but not jarring to the point that I was completely shocked, because to be honest, I wasn't. And I'll get into that a bit more as to why I wasn't. But you compare it to the burning of Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a historical landmark, which I understand. But as soon as it bursted into flames, thousands of people were talking about it. It was all over the news. Donations started flooding in so quickly. People made a whole GoFundMe page for Notre Dame, I believe, and thousands, if not millions of dollars were donated to a place that already has the funds to fix itself. So you giving your money to them isn't needed. They don't need the money because they have the ability to restructure it and repurpose and fix the infrastructure. And just the way that people rallied behind it so quickly compared to how people are rallying behind what's happening in the Amazon, it just kind of raises the idea of the media, what we are taught, what we are given, and what we pay attention to and what we decide to not pay attention to. So I'm taking a couple classes this year for my major, and in one of my classes I mentioned for my resistance and protest class, and I mentioned in class the idea that the media is sort of is sort of watched by gatekeepers. Essentially, the media is watched by gatekeepers. I learned this in AP Government. Shout out to Ms. Golly for AP Gov. But we learned that the media is a sort of gatekeeping as to what information we get and what we don't get. And that ends up causing the media to be skewed depending on what you watch. What you watch on Fox News will not be the same as what you watch on NBC, which will not be the same as MSNBC, CBS, ABC, all of those news channels. because there are certain people who are behind those news channels, and there are certain people within those news channels who are giving out the supposed news. Now that raises a bunch of problems, because if the news is not consistent and the viewership, the content the content that's being put out, if it is biased, which most of the time it will be inherently biased, the people watching it are going to consume that, and they're going to take those biases that are within the media, and they're going to take it out into the world and spew it out to other people. And that raises issues. So for example, me, I don't necessarily prefer to watch Fox News, because more than recently it has kind of been the type of outlet that kind of fuels hatred and violence towards minorities, based on my observations. And like I said, all this is all my observation. I'm not saying that any of this is fact. This is just my observation and what I think. And people who watch that are slowly or surely like getting indoctrinated into the words and the things that they're sharing. So it's just kind of concerning knowing that that happens, and so many people are kind of stuck in their ways and stuck in the way that they think, that what they hear from Fox News or MSNBC or CNN, they'll take it at that face value. They won't critique it, and they'll just run with it. And that is where problems arise, because if you just run with whatever you're hearing, you are going to not only have a bias as to whatever factual information is out there, but also it's gonna cause you to be somewhat ignorant to what's actually happening. Not only that, but the media is constructed in a sense to only show what they believe is newsworthy enough to show. So people dying in developing countries in Africa or in Southeast Asia or wherever might not be considered newsworthy here, based on the news outlets here, and then those things won't be showed. And it just really concerns me, because a lot of people are dying in silence. A lot of people are suffering in silence. And because our media is very ethnocentric, that is to say that the media is very focused and catered on America, which I understand. It is American news. It's obviously going to be American. That causes a lot of things that are outside of that scope, or outside of things that don't benefit us typically, to kind of just be pushed aside. And as a country that kind of boasts on the idea that we will help those in need, and we are the champions of diversity and inclusion, and bring us your poor and you're tired and weary and all that stuff, to kind of allow these people to just rot away without doing anything about it is sad. Not only that, but sometimes we even perpetuate these situations that are happening by assisting other countries in doing wrongful acts, which is a whole other video. But that's why, like, I do what I do, because I find the media to be a very, very powerful tool. Even you just listening to me today will raise some questions in your mind, like, oh, what she said was kind of interesting, or what she said was kind of true. Let me look more into this, if you want to. But even just the slightest ounce of media that you receive really does something within your mind. And I don't think really people understand that in like small doses, but if like it's in major doses, like major things, then people kind of recognize like, oh, like, why is everybody rallying behind this? Why does everybody know about this but not this? So like right now, like I don't know. So many things are happening right now. Like for example, like the Bahamas, like a lot of things happen in the Bahamas, and I wish that the amount of money that was raised for Notre Dame so quickly could be raised that instantly for the Bahamas or for the Amazon or for whoever else is suffering in silence. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like people are inherently selfish. I feel as if America is also inherently selfish. It was founded initially to like escape religious and or cultural persecution, but it ended up turning and twisting into a country founded on genocide and the harming of others. So obviously, it's inherent within our politics, it's inherent within our history, that America is pretty selfish. So if there are things that are happening out there that may not benefit this country, people who are higher up in this country will not pay attention to those things because they cannot gain benefit from them, which is messed up, but that's just how it is. When bad things happen in developing countries compared to when they happen to Western countries or westernized countries, the reactions are very different. When they have, for example, and I feel like I've touched about this a couple of times, for terrorist attacks, I guess you could say. When a terrorist attack happens in France, people will change their headers, their bios, to a French flag and say, "We are French, je suis Francois," or whatever, I don't know. We are France. And that happens not only for like France, but like Great Britain and all those other countries that are our allies, but also our westernized countries. Those same attacks happen in Middle Eastern countries, in African countries. The outrage is not the same. People are not changing their headers to talk about Senegal or Mozambique or Ethiopia or Sudan, unless those people who are changing them are affected, whether by knowing family or friends there, or simply just interested in it and want to support. But 9 times out of 10, it does not gain the same traction compared to when it happens to Western countries. And that is an issue, because we say everybody is equal and we want to treat everybody the same, but if we are only treating areas that are typically more affluent, more white, essentially with more privilege, in one way, and then we don't give that same energy to other countries, what does that say about us? Not only us as like, I guess, as a country, but also us as a people. I'm going to rally behind France the same way that I'm going to rally behind Egypt, or like I said, Senegal or Mozambique, the same exact way, because they are both deserving of attention and they're both deserving of aid and help. So I don't know, it's just it's concerning. And one example that I want to give, actually 2 more examples, because I've had a lot of examples, but I think the reason why this happens is because certain tragedies that happen in other countries are not palatable to the majority that are within Western countries. And typically the majority are white people, or people with privilege, as I should say. And when I say they're not palatable, it's the idea that if something happens in a certain country that doesn't link to what people think of that country, it causes cognitive dissonance. That is to say that it causes issues and conflict within somebody's mind. They begin to think, wait, they're not allowed to feel this, or they're not allowed to experience this because of whatever preconceived ideas they have about a group or a country, etc. So if a terrorist attack happens in France, people are going to rally behind France. They're going to say things like, "We're here for you," things like that. If a terrorist attack happens in Iraq, for example, people are going to say, "Oh, well, they're those nasty like Arabs, and like they're the terrorists that do all the attacks here, so they deserve it and they deserve to die," and all those things that are really terrible things to say. But it's the idea that people don't want to deal with the cognitive dissonance that perpetrators, and that, before I continue, this is not to say that anybody within the Middle East or within South Asian countries or any other developing countries are inherently bad or inherently terrorists. I'm not saying that, I'm just giving an example. With that being said, that isn't to say, so that's to say, that's saying basically that those people, because there might be some sort of trend that correlates them to something bad happening in other countries, those people don't deserve the due respect and the due care that other countries deserve, because it's like, oh, well, they brought it upon themselves. You know, some sort of like victim blaming, when most of the time those people are just innocent bystanders. And also, there's trends that have happened throughout history, and people who have been like perpetrators of those trends are not even being like, they're not even being dealt with. Like, another way to frame it is the idea that, like, for example, we talked about this, Jesus, I keep saying for example, it's too much. Black Lives Matter versus, not Black Lives Matter, the Black Panther movement, or the Black Power movement versus the Civil Rights movement. So both movements were basically created in order to further Black people within the country. But the way that they're framed is the issue. And the way that they're framed is in order to be palatable to those who are in positions of privilege, so that way they don't feel threatened. So the Civil Rights movement is seen as revolutionary. It is seen as a movement that was done right. It was seen as a movement that was done by the books, by the rules, everything like that. People now praise Martin Luther King Jr. and everything that he did, as well as other people within the movement. Whereas the Black Panther Party and the Black Power movement was radicalized. It was seen as a terrorist group, as a hate group. The FBI was on their watch simply because they did things that was within their rights that those in power did not agree with. Initially, the Civil Rights movement was just within itself. It was just by itself. There was nothing else next to it. And they didn't like it. The people in power didn't like it at all. As soon as the Black Panther Party and the Black Power movement comes along, though, they're like, oh, wait, these people are radicals. They're like toting guns and everything like that. We now like the Civil Rights movement because the Civil Rights movement wasn't threatening them and threatening their idea of what a Black person, I guess, rallying for their rights should be doing. So there's that cognitive dissonance again. And in order to resolve that, they placed the Black Panthers and the Black Power movement in a box that was not fit for them. So there's that. I've said a lot of things, and to be honest, I don't know if they all make sense. I just want everybody to keep the same energy across the board. That's all I want. If you're going to rally for France, you have to rally for Senegal. If you're gonna rally for the UK, you have to rally for Nigeria. But in all seriousness, because it shouldn't have to come to the point in which that we are dying that we finally receive coverage, which is one more thing that I want to point out before I wrap this all up, because this is already getting a bit too long. But my professor for one of my classes, he wrote an article pertaining to this thing called social movement literacy. And it's the idea in which we are teaching others how to analyze and critique social movements, so that way it is accessible to those who are not within that sort of academia or knowledge. And what he said, which was really interesting, was pertaining to the Dakota Access Pipeline, and how initially when that whole movement started, the hashtag #NoDapple started, there was little to no coverage for it when it first started. But as Black and brown bodies began to start being hurt and punished, that's when the news media coverage started up. So he says right here, hashtag #NoDapple received little to no attention in terms of national media coverage in its first several months. It wasn't until people were arrested, tear gassed, attacked by dogs, and shot with rubber bullets that the media began to cover their story. And this is what I wrote. So I said, this is an example of how Black and brown trauma is heavily emphasized, yet our achievements are not. When, for example, I can name off the top of my head so many different movies that are capitalizing off of Black trauma. When They See Us, 12 Years a Slave, Selma, Detroit, Fruitvale Station, and so many more. There are rarely stories of Black and or brown people that are circulated that put them in a positive light. Because if you continuously put those people in a positive light when for so many years they've been put into a negative light, it will cause that dissonance for those in power and those who are gatekeeping the media and the stories that they want to tell. But basically, our stories, our distress and our outrage is never heard until something is being done to us. And that is also an issue, because the media doesn't want to give Black and brown people their due rights in terms of how they're covered until there is something that they consider noteworthy. And most of the time, that's when they are tear gassed, when they are shot, when they're arrested, etc., etc., etc. You see all these riots happening. These riots are the ones that are being pushed out into the media in order to paint a certain light of those people who are within those protests. But when you see peaceful protests happening, they don't gain the same traction. So it's like, why? Like, what's not clicking? So like I said, I've said a lot of words right now. And I really hope that they made sense, because to me they made sense. But if you have any questions, please leave a comment or please DM me, ask me, and I will answer you should it be like a respectful question. But overall, just to give, I guess, a sort of recap, I need to breathe. The media is a gatekeeper, period. The reason why it is a gatekeeper is because the media decides what is newsworthy and what is not. Typically, those within positions of privilege are going to be in the news more often than those without that privilege. Also, the media is varied and biases, and that can cause skewed arguments to be put out to certain groups of people, which thus gives them maybe not incorrect information, but information that is tinged with a certain bias that might cause them to feel some type of way about some sort of issue. Not only that, but the media typically does not want to give any sort of recognition or attention to issues pertaining to those who are not in privilege unless there is some sort of trauma associated with it, whether it be arrests, whether it be protesting and a riot ensues, whether it be being hurt, or whether it be literally dying on the streets, you know? And overall, like, that is just wrong. The media is so powerful in shaping the minds of the people who consume it that it needs to be diversified. My voice needs to be heard. Voices like my own and voices that are rarely heard within the media need to be heard, because once you have that rolling, you have a diversity in ideas, you have a diversity in biases, and you have a diversity in the stories that are being told. You are no longer being told a single story. For y'all, I guess, watching this, all I can really tell you is to just be open-minded. Be a better listener to those who may not always be listened to. Not only that, but always take what you're listening to with a grain of salt. There is always a hint of bias in whichever you watch. And even my stuff. Like, I have biased ways in how I approach the world and how I speak about certain things, as you can tell. But always take it with a grain of salt, but always try to follow up with it. Try to do research. Try to learn why things are a certain way. That is all I can really say. I hope you gained something from this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to have a lot of fun editing this and trying to get it down to like 20 minutes or less. So we'll see how that goes. If you're all the way at the end of this video, I want y'all to comment comment what your favorite color is. I'm curious. My favorite color is yellow because it reminds me of the sun. I love yellow so much. But with that, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on my social media. Everything will be down below, and I will see you next week. Bye.